Hi, everybody. This is Pamela Samuels Young, and I am here to conduct a webinar, my very first webinar. So we've been having a few technical difficulties this morning, but I think everything is under control. If at any point during the call you don't hear me or something goes bad, please text me in the chat because I can see that. Before I begin, I want to thank the members of the Black Women Film Network for sponsoring this webinar. The organization has supported me since I first published my first book, and Every Reasonable Doubt, and I'll talk a little bit more about them at the end of the presentation. You see them on the screen, hopefully, these beautiful women from Atlanta, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them as we get toward the end of the presentation. Before I begin, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I'm going to do. I'm going to really talk about not actually my specific writing process, but how I find time to write, and I guess a little bit about my writing process, and then some tips that I hope will help you get through what can sometimes be a difficult time, and then I'm going to hopefully save at least 20 minutes or so for questions at the end. Everybody's muted right now, but at the end of the presentation, I'm going to unmute everybody, and you can feel free to ask questions. Again, my name is Pamela Samuels Young, and the title of this workshop is How to Write a Novel Despite Your Day Job. I have a couple questions to ask you. The first is, aside from your writing talent, do you have the determination to type more than 70,000 words on over 300 pages? And are you willing to spend most of your free time glued to your computer? And I hope the answer to that question is yes, because that is what it's going to take. The average book, the average novel is about 70,000 words. My novels tend to be about 100,000 words. But typically when you're in the range of 70,000, that's 70,000 to 100,000 is probably the range of the average novel. And that's what it's going to take. I want to ask, do you enjoy writing? I know a lot of people who want to be writers, but they don't particularly enjoy writing. I think enjoying writing is key. Can you accept constructive criticism? That can be difficult at times. Can you handle brutal criticism? Because sometimes the criticism is going to be brutal. And can you keep going despite the rejection? And that is so key. And I'm hoping that you've all answered yes to all of those questions. And if so, let's get started. In my opinion, the most important step toward becoming a published author is to finish your novel. I know a lot of people who have started a novel, who are thinking about a novel, but I don't know all that many people who have finished a novel other than my writing, my published author friends. But I've met people along the way who meet me at book signings or meet me at conferences, and they tell me they want to write a novel, and they talk about their ideas, but they don't finish it. They start it, but they don't finish it. I'm going to hopefully give you some tips that will help you not just start your novel, but finish your novel. Again, I want to repeat, the average commercial novel is about anywhere from 70,000 to 100,000 words. Approximately 80,000 words equals about 300 typewritten pages, and really in book format, 3 typewritten pages equal 2 book pages in a printed trade paperback book. A 300-page manuscript in your typewriter will be a 200-page book. So when you're typing and beginning the process, don't assume that if you have 300 pages out of your computer that you've printed out, that it's going to be a 300-page book. No, it's going to be a 200-page book. The most important key for me in finishing my novels was preparing a writing schedule. I now have 6 novels and 2 nonfiction books, really 1 nonfiction book and 1 kind of journal. And the key going back on this was preparing a writing schedule and sticking to it. I didn't just say I'm going to write here and there. I didn't say I was going to write every day, because I still practice law, and there's no way that I can write every day. I know writers who write every day. I have a day job. That cannot happen. And I know people who have a day job who write every day, but that did not work for me. it was key. I will have certain days blocked off from writing. I'll either say after work, 7 to 10, or I might block out a whole Saturday or a Sunday. If you look at my December schedule, it will show that I think from December 3rd through for the next 5 days, I'm going to be in Palm Springs writing. Okay, I plan it ahead of time like I plan everything else. You plan dates, you plan the theater, you plan family events. If you want to write a novel, you need to plan your writing schedule. And if you don't have a day timer or use it, I used to put Post-it notes on my refrigerators. So when I got home got home from work, that's the first thing I saw when I got home. Another important thing to do is to determine your optimal writing time. Are you an early morning person? Are you a late night person? These days, I'm I'm tending to become a early morning writer. I usually the other night I got up at 2 o'clock in the morning to write. It wasn't like I couldn't sleep, but it's the idea that I had. It was sort of like just on my mind, and I wrote from like 2 to 5. And I went to sleep, back to sleep from 5 a.m. to 6. And from there, I got up to go walking and then get ready for work. And I am, without question, a morning person. I am not a night person. Another important thing to do is make a commitment to write to yourself. I know people who say, I'm going to write 2,500 words a day or 2,500 words a week. 2,500 words is about 10 pages. I don't commit to a number of pages. I commit to hours. I decide that I'm going to take 5 hours here. I'm going to take a whole day there. Now, I like longer writing periods. If I have an hour's free time, I'm not going to write if I'm in the creating process as opposed to the revision process. If I'm in the revision process, yes. When I finish the first draft, I can take an hour and maybe revise 4 or 5 pages. But if I'm in the creating process, I need much more time than an hour. An hour is not enough for me. But some people got what works. You have to determine what works for you. And one thing I didn't say at the beginning that I need to say now, you need to take what you're learning in this webinar and tweak it so that it works for you. The same process will not work for everybody. I attended dozens of writing workshops in my career, and I've taken what works for me. Some of it worked, some of it didn't, some of it I have to tweak, and that's what I want you guys to do. It's also important to establish a regular writing schedule. I was much more regular with my writing before I was a published author. Now I'm not as regular. I may write 2 days a week here, and then a weekend, and then skip a week, and then write, Saturday, Sunday. But I'm more experienced now at it. But when I was writing before I was published, I was pretty regular. Maybe it was Thursday, Friday, maybe it was Saturday, Sunday. I think it's important to have a regular schedule when you're starting out. Long weekend sessions you can choose, or short daily writing periods. Again, 2 to 3 hours or 8 to 12. You have to decide what works for you. Devote your free time to writing. And when I say writing, I put that in parentheses. Writing can be, in my mind, for me, it's thinking about my story. I'm constantly thinking about my story in rush hour traffic. If I'm at lunch, I may have a little notepad, may jot something down. In my mind, I'm writing because I'm carrying my story forward. You can do it on your lunch hours, your vacation days, holidays, weekends. One of the things I love to do is to check into a hotel. And typically I may check in, I have a late checkout on Sunday. I can get quite a bit done. And I'm going to there were times when I would go to a hotel that's, 2 miles from my house, because I just needed to get away from my home and just really write. You can also get to work early and stay late. I did that a lot. And it also pays off because people think that you're working on company work, and it's like, wow, you were there so late last night, you're really getting a lot done. One important key is really you have to cut back on socializing because you're going to need the time to write. My first book took me 3 years to write, and it took a lot of time. I was working at a large corporate law firm on Melvin and Myers at the time, and I just had to get in the writing when and where I could. And it meant I didn't hang out with my girlfriends as much as I did. I wasn't dating at the time. I didn't see a lot of movies, but that was a sacrifice that I wanted to make to get my novel done. it's important that you find a suitable location to write. Home or office, in my prior home, I had spent all this money and time and effort in really putting my office together, and I didn't write there that much. There were just times when I just wanted to get out of the house. It was almost like I felt by leaving the house, I was going to my writing job, and I would go to Starbucks. My first 2 or 3 books were written at the Starbucks in Seal Beach, California. And the latter ones were written at the Panera Bread in Seal Beach, California. I would take a little table in the back, and no, the noise didn't bother me. The people didn't bother me. I had my little coffee, and I would stay there. And I knew that I was going to go there for X number of hours, and I would focus on my story. Local library may work for you. I had a great library in my old neighborhood, the Cerritos Library. If you live in the Los Angeles area, and it's a great library to write. The only downside and why I didn't continue to write at the library is because I'm there 5 or 6 hours, and I may want something to eat. You can't eat in the library. You can't drink in the library. And so over time, and if you leave, you might as well take your chair. And so over time, I tried a library a couple times, and it just didn't work for me. Starbucks, a park, some people like to be outside. That doesn't work for me. I need to be inside. I've mentioned local hotels and timeshares. For several years, I would sign up for those free timeshare presentations so that I can get the free weekend time. And there's also writer retreats and special writing centers. And it's also important for you to explain your goals to your families and friends and ask for their support, because it takes a lot of time, and you're going to need to be away. And it's important to note that John Grisham got up at 4 a.m. to write before going to work. My early books were written at 4 a.m. in the morning. James Patterson wrote in the morning before heading off to his job as an advertising executive. And Mary Higgins Clark wrote late at night after her 5 children went to sleep. So just find out what works best for you. I love this quote from this philosopher. Time is a created thing. To say I don't have time is to say I don't want to. I really, truly believe that. It's important that you master the basics of your genre. A lot of people just start writing I want to write a romance. Well, I've read a lot, and they just start. You need to study the basics of your genre. And I'm going to quickly go over a few. There's romance, mystery, action and adventure, science fiction, fantasy, horror, westerns, etc. One thing I didn't clearly realize when I first started writing is the difference between commercial fiction and literary fiction. Literary fiction is typically character-driven. It's poetic writing, longer sentences, more complex sentence structure. The Color Purple, The Lovely Bones, The Emperor of Ocean Park are all examples of literary fiction. Commercial fiction, plot-driven, concise writing, shorter sentences, simplistic sentence structure. I am definitely a commercial fiction writer, no question. The Firm, The Da Vinci Code, and Roses Are Red are examples of commercial fiction. And here's and you can do this in Microsoft. You can there's a program where you can determine the readability stats for your book. If you email me later, I can explain how to do it. I compare The Emperor of Ocean Park and Pop Goes the Weasel, which is by James Patterson, and you can clearly see the difference. The words, I took one chapter of Emperor of Ocean Park and one chapter of Pop Goes the Weasel. They were about 1,300 words. But look at the differences. Paragraph 7 in Emperor of Ocean Park, 50 in James Patterson's book, because they're shorter, and because in the Emperor they were longer. The sentences, only 31 sentences in the Emperor and 125 in the James Patterson book. So I mean, this is a clear example in terms of stylistically of a difference between commercial fiction and literary fiction. And look at the grade level. The highest grade level in the readability stats is 12. And you'll find that The Emperor of Ocean Park was a grade level 12, and Patterson's book was 5th grade. And look at the writing ease, 45% versus 75 in Patterson's book. It's always important to avoid passive sentences, and both of them do a good job of not having that. But look at the average sentences. Average sentences per paragraph. 4.4 and 2.5 for James. But look at the average words. The average words in a sentence for Stephen L. Carter were 43 words in a sentence. I mean, long, complex sentences, whereas James Patterson, it was about 10 words. So this is a good comparison, and I urge you to do that exercise with your own book. It's important to study the trademarks of your genre. Romance would have a romantic relationship. A suspense novel is going to have, or mystery is going to have plot twist and a lot of action. A suspense or drama, is that a trademark of your novel, of your genre? You need to study what other writers, other good writers, are doing in your genre. It's also important to find out what's selling in your genre. I'm assuming that you're writing and you want to get paid and you want to get published. What are publishers buying? What are people buying? Review the bestsellers list. Stay in the bookstore and browse the shelves. Look at publishersmarketplace.com, Publishers Weekly, and also Publishers Lunch. And there's a free version and a paid version. I really urge you to sign up for Publishers Lunch, the free version. Every day or every few days, they will announce what agents have sold a book and the author, and it will give you like a range of the deal. They'll sell a nice deal, which might be X amount of money. And so that's a good place not only to find out what's selling, but also to get the names of agents you may want to pitch to. Good writers are avid readers. I'm amazed at how many times I've met people who say, well, I don't really read, but I want to write a book. I think it's important to be an avid reader if you want to be a writer. Also, who do you consider your genre's best writers? Study them. And ask yourself, why do you enjoy reading their work? Study their writing style and techniques. You know, when I first started writing, I finished my first book before a friend at work gave me a James Patterson book. And that was the first book I've ever read in one day. She gave me a copy of Roses Are Red. And I was amazed that I had read the book in one day, because I don't read books in one day. I'm a fairly slow reader. I mean, not real slow, but I just don't read books in one day. And I didn't want to put it down. I went back and took that book apart and learned some things that I applied to my writing. The chapters were short. There's a lot of action. He hooked you at the beginning. He hooked you at the end. I don't think any chapter in that book was over 4 pages. I adopted his writing style, and I think it's worked for me. Outline a novel you enjoyed reading. I had a writing instructor who said to do that, and I was like, wow. And it was a light bulb moment for me. I outlined John Grisham's The Firm. And as I went through the outline and went back and looked at the outline, it was a light bulb moment for me, because I understood how the story came through. I understood how he had dropped certain plot ideas. What I did, type the opening and ending sentences or paragraphs of these chapters, summarize the chapters, analyze each chapter structure, and analyze the book structure. For instance, in the Firm, it opens with Mitch is meeting with the partners, and the partners are trying to get this, top law student to come to Memphis. And I'm not talking about a long outline. I have a couple of sentences per chapter. And that exercise was so instructive for me in helping me learn how to learn story structure. Listen to books on tape. That is a great way to understand story structure. And ask yourself, did you want to keep listening? Were you bored? Why? Ask books on tape. I'm an avid listener of books on tape, and it was very helpful in helping me learn plotting and pacing. Again, study the writing craft. Here's some great resources that I think you should use. If you only have the money to spend on one magazine, it should be the Writer magazine, not Writer's Digest, the Writer. Because the people who are writing the articles in that magazine are typically best-selling authors. People they're profiling are typically best-selling authors. And I find those articles even today very helpful for me. I love the book, This Year You Write Your Novel by Walter Mosley, as well as Writing the Breakout Novel and the First 5 Pages by Noah Lukeman. Join writing organizations, please. It's so important. I've been a member of Sisters in Crime and Mystery Writers of America. I think I've been a member of Sisters in Crime for over 20 years. And just find the right organization for your genre And attend those meetings. Even if you can't attend all the time, sometimes there's going to be information on their websites that's helpful for you, and it's pretty cheap. Take writing courses and attend writing conferences. I highly recommend Robert McKee's Story Seminar. Most of the people in there are going to be interested in writing film. I still think it works for novels. Form a writers group. I have been in a writers group of 4 women for over 9 years. We meet once a month. We critique each other's work. We meet on like one Sunday a month, and a couple weeks before, the person whose work is going to be critiqued must be submitted a week or so before. And we've all been very supportive and helpful of each other in promoting each other's writing career. And please be supportive. My group is that. Outline before you start writing. Now, this is very controversial because some people say, no, it restricts you, it's a free-for-all. Again, take what works for you. If the outline doesn't work for you, then just do a story summary. But for me, outlining works for me, and here's why. I spent 3 years on my first book, which I didn't outline. I just was like flailing and writing and doing whatever came. After my second book, I sat down and did an outline, and I finished that book in about a year. So outlining works for me. And remember, you don't have to be wedded to the outline. My first outline is never the same as the finished book. It's just a map. You can go off in any other direction. My outlines are short, like 1-sentence descriptions per chapter. And I can send you, if anybody who's interested, I can email me afterwards and I can send you the outline I have for anybody's diary so you can see what I do. If you're having trouble outlining, just jot down your thoughts or write what comes and organize later. Use your passive time to mull over your story. In the shower, the morning commute, standing in the grocery store line. People always say, well, I don't have a lot of time. You have a lot of passive time. Use that to plot your story. I certainly did. For some more tips, carry a small notepad or use notes or a recorder on your phone. Write down all your ideas. You may think ideas silly, but later on you're thinking, wow, what was that idea? I wish I still had it. Visualize your opening chapter as a scene in a movie. Write your opening sentence. And don't throw away anything. Say that write, but don't rewrite yet. What I do is I concentrate on finishing my first draft. So I'm working on a book now. I've just started outlining it about a week ago. And hopefully I'm going to finish with the outline in another couple of weeks. And then I'm going to begin writing from that first chapter, and I'm going to go all the way to the end. I am not going to stop to rewrite. I'm not worried about making it perfect right now. I want to get to the end of the book. Then I want to go back, and I'll spend the next 5 or 6 months rewriting. Don't spend weeks or months polishing a few chapters. Because in my first attempt at writing, I spent 6 weeks working on one chapter that at the end of the book wasn't even in the book. So I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore. When I sit down, I write 2 or 3 chapters. When I sit down, I may read them over quickly. I don't revise them. I write 2 or 3 more. And don't worry if you don't have an ending yet. Because sometimes I start and I have an ending, but it's not perfect. It'll come. Once you have a first draft, spend as much time as you need to flesh out and polish your story. Feel free to stray from your outline. Cut it where it's necessary. And don't fall in love with your words. I mean, the real writing is in the editing. A lot of new writers, they don't want to cut anything. They don't want to be edited. But, my first experience with, and my editor at BET Books, Linda Howard, was she wanted me to change my ending. And I was so depressed and I was mad and I was walking around the house. And my ex-husband said, you know what, after hearing me gripe for about 3 weeks, said, why don't you just rewrite it the way she wants it and see what you think? And I finally did that, and he was absolutely right. What the editor had asked me to do, the way she had asked me to change the ending, she was absolutely right. One thing, if you have the time to, not under time deadline, is to put the manuscript away for a few weeks and don't think about it. Then edit it again and again and again until you're satisfied. I like the ability to step away from the manuscript after I've been working on it for 6 or 7 months and take a breather. And then come back to it because you're going to have a fresh eyes and fresh perspective. Writer's block. Just a couple of words. I think writer's block is just procrastination. I've never had writer's block from the point of view of I'm sitting in front of my computer and I can't write. Now, I had what I call BIC, BIC syndrome, which I call butt in chair syndrome. I didn't want to put my butt in the chair, but once I'm in the chair, I can typically write. And if I don't feel like writing, I use that time as think time. Think about my stories, ideas. I think about my characters. Or I may just start reading another book just to study the writing craft. Don't delete your prior versions. When I was first writing my first book, I wrote this chapter that I thought, after finishing it, I thought it sucked and I deleted it. Later on, I wanted it back. So what I do now is if I'm going to change something significant in the manuscript, I will change the version. I will save as in version 2, version 3. Typically, I will have at least 20 versions of every book that I've written, at least. And of course, back up your manuscript on a flash drive or cloud. You may think your book is wonderful, but you need to validate your efforts. It's very, very important. We become so wedded to what we've written. So solicit feedback. Select readers who read a genre. Ask readers to provide constructive criticism. Some people can't do that. Avoid close family and friends if possible, because you want people who are really going to be honest with you and aren't going to be worried about hurting your feelings and who know how to do it. And find people who are going to commit to reading the whole book. Obtain a minimum of 10 opinions, and ask a book club to read your manuscript. And it's best if you got a friend at work who has an avid reader friend, have that person read it who doesn't know you, because she's going to be more apt to give you an honest opinion. And accepting constructive criticism may save you from the agent's reject pile. So you're going to get it from an agent, so you might as well get it from somebody else first. Give your readers a checklist of what you want them to review in your book. Is the plot engaging? Are the characters believable? Was any scene confusing? Did you like or dislike the writing style? What would you change? Would you change anything? Would you buy this book? And put your ego on hold and listen with an open mind, and that is sometimes hard to do. I can testify. And you need to pay attention to what isn't said. Silence and avoidance means that they didn't like it. You know, when I finished my first book, I gave it to about 20 people, and nobody said a word. And I still have the manuscript, and nobody said a word because it sucked. So when somebody isn't saying anything or they don't want to comment, it's not good. I knew I was ready when I gave my book to people, and that they were like, they read it fast. They wanted other people to read it that they knew. You know, people who like a book are going to talk about it. They can't help it. When somebody says, well, I didn't have time to finish it, that's not a good sign. And if 4 of 10 people don't understand the scene, it's not clear. If 1 in 10 people hate the chapter, I say go with your gut. I don't let one person dictate what I'm going to do. And if no one is as excited as your book as you are, it's not ready. It's important to enter writing competitions. Write short stories, attend conferences, and get the critiques from the experts there. Consider a writing coach. I've listed my writing coach, and be wary. Get a recommendation first, because I wasted money on another writing coach who was just awful. She wanted to just, correct commas. I didn't need that. I know grammar. I needed a plot person who could help me structure a story. And writing short stories and also entering competitions are really key, because I won the Black Expressions Book Club writing contest in 2003, and it was weeks later that I got my first agent, because I had that honor. I think part of it in my query letter. If you have the opportunity, if the opportunity arises, be prepared to pitch like a pro. Before I was published, I was at a writing conference, and there was an agent sitting behind me. I didn't realize she was an agent until she mentioned it, and she said, well, what is your book about? And it's about a lawyer, and I flubbed. I didn't have my 30-second copy. I didn't have my book jacket copy. I couldn't describe my concept for my book in one sentence. And when I got a card and I got home and I looked at it, she was the agent who had sold The Princess Diaries. And I later sent her a query, but never got heard back. But, it's important to have that elevator speech for your book. When your book is finished and you're ready to self-publish or to search for an agent, refuse to let rejection stop you. Okay, the next 5 minutes we're going to spend is way more important than what I've said up until now for the last half an hour. You are going to face rejection. I mean, a few lucky people don't face rejection, but most of the major authors have faced rejection, and it's important to keep going despite it. If you have a good book idea, if you have a passion for writing, I say stay with it. I got over 12 rejection letters from agents. And what if I had quit? My first 2 books were published first by BT, then Harlequin, and the third book, Murder on a Down Low, was rejected by 9 publishing houses. What if I had quit? What if I had quit and not written the next 3 or 4 books? I mean, and gotten to the point where I won the NAACP Image Award for my 6th book. You cannot quit if this is your passion. And frankly, if it's your passion, you won't quit. That's the reality. Here are 3 realities that a writer should never forget. Reality number 1, rejection by an agent or a publisher doesn't mean your book isn't good. And I don't know if you've heard of the book Steps by Jerry Kaczynski, but this book won the National Book Award in 1969. And in 1975, 6 years later, a clever freelance writer wanted to prove the point that agents don't know good writing. So what he did was he typed up the first 21 pages of the book and submitted it to 4 publishers. All of them rejected it. The National Book Award winner, all of them rejected it. And what was so funny, the publisher of one of his prior books rejected it. You know, Houghton Mifflin said, several of us read your entitled novel here with admiration for writing and style. Jerry Kaczynski comes to mind. I mean, so here's a National Book Award that was rejected by 4 publishing houses. And the writer who did this got a lot of criticism saying, well, you only sent 21 pages. So what he did was he waited some time. He typed up the whole book, submitted it again to a number of agents, a number of publishing houses and agents. All of them rejected it, okay? All of them rejected it. So it just shows what is a good book is a matter of taste. Confederacy of Dunces. John Kennedy O'Toole's book, it was rejected numerous times, and he ultimately, at the age of 31, ended up committing suicide. I just got a note that someone's saying they can't hear me. Is that true? If you can text me, can you tell me if you can still hear me? Can someone tell me if they can hear me now? Okay, people say they can hear. Great. Confederacy. Okay, I'm here. I'm going in and out. Okay. Hopefully, I'm going to hold still here, and I want you to tell me that everything's going smooth. Okay, but I'm going to keep going. John O'Toole, his book was rejected so many times, he ultimately committed suicide. But his mother never gave up on that book, and she kept submitting it. It finally got published by Louisiana State University Press. And you know what? It won the Pulitzer Prize. After all that rejection, it won the Pulitzer Prize. So don't let rejection stop you. And here are some short excerpts from some actual rejection letters. Somebody told Stephen King, "We are not interested in science fiction which deals with negative utopias. They do not sell." The Diary of Annie Frank was rejected. The girl doesn't, it seems to me, have a special perception or feeling which would lift that book above the curiosity level. A book that sold millions of copies and that is still in print. That book was from 1952 and it's still in print. There are a couple of more. Kipling was told that, he didn't know how to use the English language in one of his rejection letters. And George Orwell, the author of Animal Farm, was told it was impossible to sell animal stories in the U.S. I'm giving you these examples to let you know that rejection doesn't mean your book isn't good. Reality number 2, most successful writers survive being rejected, and so will you. Get over it. Keep going. Rewrite the book if necessary. Again, that first book I wrote, I could have submitted it to 100 agents, and it wouldn't have gotten it would have been rejected, and it should have been. I didn't understand story structure at that time. But I continued to write, I continued to hone my craft, and I got better. And we all know the story of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, rejected by 8 publishing houses, and went on to become the biggest children's book in history. Another one, people may not know, Gone with the Wind was a book before it was a movie, and it won the Pulitzer Prize in 1937, but it was rejected by over 20 publishing houses. Over 25 publishers rejected Invisible Light by New York Times bestselling author Elin Harris. He actually was forced to self-publish because he couldn't get a publisher. John Grisham's A Time to Kill was rejected 45 times, leading him to self-publish the book. And then think about this, even the Zagats guy, these 2 people here, Tina and Nina Zagat, they just liked reviewing restaurants, and they would hand them out in paper to their friends, and they said, you guys should do a book. They tried to get publishers to publish the book, and they was like, nobody wants a restaurant review from an average person. They have a multi-million-dollar company now reviewing everything. So, okay, that rejection doesn't mean it isn't a good idea. Zane was told that blacks or African Americans didn't read erotica. How stupid. Mary Higgins Clark received more than 3 dozen rejection letters, and today she has more than 80 million books in print. Again, I'm trying to let you understand that you can do all of the things I've said about the writing process, but if you let rejection stop you, you're never going to get published. Here's my former agent, Paul Fedorko. I love this quote. I realized that, like baseball, if you get a hit, not a homer, just a hit about once every 3 times, you are pretty much a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. That's what keeps me going. And just because an editor rejects it doesn't mean it's not good or shouldn't be published. It just means that the editor didn't see it. Now, some people get lucky. Now, this is the Nicholas Spark wrote the notebooks and a number of books that you've recently seen in movies. His book was sent to 25 agents who rejected it, and the 24 of them rejected it. The other, the one agent who accepted it was 27, had only been an agent for 6 months, and had never sold a book before, and she sold it for $1 million advance. What happened was it came into the house, and I guess that agent was either leaving or wasn't interested in it and gave it to the new girl, and she loved it, and she got $1 million deal for him. Now, this is really amazing. The Kite Runner was written by Dr. Khalid Hosseini. It was his first attempt at writing a novel. He was a doctor, and he began writing the book in March of 2001 and finished it in June of 2002. Then by July of that year, he had found a literary agent who then sold the manuscript within a few weeks. So, everybody doesn't get rejected. Some people, it just works out. Reality number 3, publishing is a business. The money-making potential of your book is the bottom line. And I just quickly wanted to show you the 10 richest authors. James Patterson, $94 million. He's way above everybody else. And Jeff McKinney is the guy who wrote the Wimpy Kid series. John Grisham, Janet Ivanovich, Stephen King. The bottom 10, Nora Roberts, Danielle Steele, Suzanne Collins. And Suzanne Collins is The Hunger Games. She wrote The Hunger Games. Obviously, J.K. Rowling, even though she hasn't written a new book, still making money, and Dean Koontz. A lot of money to be made. I'm getting close to the end, but this story is really, I think, instructive. Debbie McComber was a dyslexic mother of 4 who always knew she wanted to be a writer. She experienced rejection for 5 years, including having her work publicly ridiculed. And what happened is she attended a writing conference, and the day before the writing conference, she got a call from one of the conference presenters saying, "Hey, your work was selected among 5 people that we want to read it during the class. Do we have permission to read it during the class?" And she was like, "Oh, sure." She was like, "Oh, so excited that she's going to be an example of good work, and they're going to read her book." Got to the class, and the presenter said, "Well, only one of the 5 entries was really good." And she was like, "Oh," she was so excited. She thought it was going to be hers. And the woman proceeded to read her excerpt, and tear it apart. She was like completely humiliated, and everybody was laughing at her writing, just laughing on the floor, laughing at her writing. She was so mad. She got home and did something they tell you not to do. She took that whole book and she submitted the whole book, and you could do this back then, submitted the whole book to a publishing house. You know what? that publishing house accepted that book. That book that presenter laughed at, that the whole class laughed at. And where's Debbie Macomber today? Today, she is an international best-selling author with 100 million books in print in more than 23 languages. And her books have done something few people do. That is, simultaneously hold down the #1 spot on the New York Times, USA Today, Publishers Weekly, and the BookScan bestsellers list. Lots of writers get to those lists. Few people get there and hold the #1 spot at the same time. So I'm hoping these examples show you that you have to keep going. And quickly, my personal tales of rejection. I talked a little bit about it. I now have 6 novels, 1 nonfiction book, and a hair journal. And my first 2 books were published BET and Harlequin, because Harlequin bought BET. Couldn't sell Murder on Down Low, and I self-published. And I self-published with the goal of really wanting to go back to a publishing house. So my goal was to sell a lot of Murder on Down Low and get picked up. It didn't get picked up. Murder on Down Low was rejected by, I think, 9 publishing houses. Then I self-published Mankind, which won the Black Caucus of the American Library Association's Fiction Award. And then I published the next 2. Again, all along, I'm hoping to get picked up by a publisher. And frankly, it was 2010 when I was watching the NAACP Image Awards, and Tyler Perry said something that changed my focus. When he was accepting his award, he said the following quote: "We don't have to wait for someone to greenlight our project. We can create our own intersections." And it was like I was at home in my bedroom, just kind of ironing and doing other stuff, and it was a light bulb moment for me. I felt like he was talking to me, saying, stop trying to get self-published. Stop trying to get a publisher. Do your own thing. And I began to embrace my status as a self-published author. And lo and behold, 4 years later, I am standing on the stage at the NAACP Image Award, accepting the award for Outstanding Fiction for Anybody's Daughter. So I say stay with it. If this is your dream, go for it. I'm going to prepare to open the lines up to take some questions. Here's some parting pointers. After finishing one book, start writing your next one. Continue to master your craft. Recognize that you will become a better writer as a result of the rejection. And do not stop believing in your dream. That is so, so, so important. There's one word for a writer who never gives up: published. I love this quote. And his website has a great free download. It's called A Newbie's Guide to Publishing. Please go there and pick it up. It's www.jaconrath.com. And as I come to a close and get ready to open up the lines, first I want to thank the Black Women Film Network for sponsoring this webinar. The organization has really supported me since my first book, Every Reasonable Doubt, was published. And in fact, I'll be a featured writer at their book festival, I think it's in March, in Atlanta. And to learn more about it, please go to their website, and that's blackwomenfilm.org. And also, this webinar a recording of it will be available on their website. And again, I want to thank all the members of the organization for supporting this webinar. And if you're not a member, you can join even though you're not in Atlanta. Just go to the website, www.blackwomenfilm.org. And remember, this webinar is being recorded. So I'm going to, I'm going to figure out here how I open how I let people talk, and I'm going to use the last 15 minutes to answer your questions. Give me a second here. Figure that out. Okay, let's see. Okay, give me a second. Okay, the option just went away. Okay, I'm going to need you guys to text me your questions until I can figure this out.
All attendees are muted and may unmute themselves by pressing *6.
Okay, everybody, if you press *6, you are now unmuted. And let's see, can somebody do that and hopefully ask me a question? I'm
Hello?
hoping people are still on the line.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Speak up just a little bit more for me.
Okay. Hi. I am at the end of writing my first book, and I'm wanted to know what kind of interaction should I expect from working with an editor?
That's a good question. My first editor, Glenda Howard at BET Books, who is very good, who has been edited by edited a lot of well-known writers. I forget what it's called, but they typically give you an editorial letter where they're going to focus on there's two types of editors: a developmental editor and a copy editor. Copy editor is looking for grammar and consistency and commas. What I'm talking about is the developmental editor who's going to say, wait a minute, you got this character doing this in this chapter and that chapter, and it's not consistent, or this chapter is too slow, or the first half of the pacing is slow and then it goes fast. I mean, they're going to help you develop your story, or they're going to say, you know what, I'm 50 pages in and nothing's happened. I mean, those are the things that a good editor will do. So you're looking for someone who can help you with the story development and plotting. And frankly, I no longer hire an editor. Believe it or not, I didn't hire an editorial editor for a developmental editor for Anybody's Daughter. I did for the book before that. My developmental editors were 3 book clubs. If you look in the back of my book, I thank 3 book clubs who were instrumental. They came to my house separate days, and they critiqued the book for me. They were avid readers. They read my other books. I relied on them to be my developmental editors, and it worked out.
That's a super awesome answer. Thank you so much. That helps me a lot.
Other questions?
Hello?
I have
a
question. What has been your greatest, what you are the most proud of in becoming a published writer? Or was there a moment that was your greatest triumph heretofore about being a published writer?
You know, if you'd asked me that before Anybody's Daughter, I would have said I still remember the moment when I learned that the date that my first book, Every Reasonable Doubt, was going to be released, and I still remember standing in the Barnes & Noble in Long Beach, California, and staring at that book on the shelf. It was a long road, and my book was on the bookstore shelf. That was an exciting moment. But today, I am most proud of Anybody's Daughter, not just because it won the NAACP Image Award, but because it's shining a light on child sex trafficking. Our children are being sexually exploited, and people don't know or understand it. I'm getting so much love for that book. I've been basically become an advocate on the issue of sex trafficking. I had a friend of mine who was at the airport recently, and she saw somebody reading the book, and she went up to them and said, hey, I know her. She's a friend of mine. And it was a social worker. And the woman told her that she's a social worker and that they've been asked to read the book as social workers to help understand what's going on with the trafficking. And I had somebody who used to be in the life and who assumed that I had been involved in the life as a sexually exploited person, because she said, well, oh my God, I never would have thought somebody could have written that book so realistically and not have lived this life. So that was really those words from her, and the honor from the NAACP, and the fact that the book is getting the attention, and the fact that it's helping people understand that there's no such thing as a child prostitute. They are sexually exploited children.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I wanted to know how free are you to share your material before it's published if you don't have an agent?
One of the things, too, is understanding copyright law. Once you've completed it, it's copyrighted. I mean, it's yours. You can show it on your computer. You want a copyright to help you if you want to sue in federal court. You need to show a copyright. That said, one, I give it to people I trust. Two, I never give them an electronic copy. I entered a contest recently where they wanted an electronic copy, and I was just stressed about giving them. I don't want to give people an electronic copy. If you're gonna steal my book, you're gonna have to type every word yourself over again. So I am not as paranoid as some people about it, but I do share it with book clubs that I know, and I have about 20 friends at work that I share it with who also read it for me. So I'm just not that concerned about it. You don't hear about it a lot. Now, I will tell you this. 2 of my ebooks are up on this site for free. And I think it must be out of the country because I emailed them and said, you can't sell my books for free. Every Reasonable Doubt and In Firm Pursuit are on some site where you can download free music and free movies, not free, bootleg them. And, and I was really upset. And then I was thinking, you know what? It's an honor. My books are being bootlegged. That means people want to read them. So I'm not overly concerned about somebody stealing it. But again, I would never post it on they have these sites where, you can upload your work and have people read it and comment it. I would never upload an electronic version because I think it's much too easy to steal it then. But I do give it to people that I know and trust. We got about 9 minutes before we close, so.
Hi, Pamela. What book are you reading that you recommend in fiction from an author? A book that you...
I recommend 40 Acres by Dwayne Alexander Smith.
I read that one. It was awesome.
Yeah, wasn't it?
It was awesome.
Back on my bookshelf. I'm trying to see what I'm reading. But Dwayne is a first-time author. He's a movie. He writes scripts and movies. I'm going into my Audible category right now. I'm trying to figure out what I have in here. I listen to mostly books on tape these days because if I have time to be home, I'm typically going to be writing or doing something book-related, and I'm in a car a lot, so I listen to books on tape. I'm reading Gray Mountain by John Grisham. I like it. It's not one of my favorites of his, but I'm liking it. I'm looking through my phone. I'll tell you what I got in my to-be-read list. I have A Trouble in Mind by Jeffrey Deaver. I have Suspicion by Joseph Fender. And I have Hostage by Robert Craze. I read probably, 90% fiction. 90% mystery and 10% self-help and nonfiction.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, hi Pam, how are you?
Good.
This is Ron Haywood from Detroit.
Oh, hi.
How are you doing today?
Good.
Great. Good. Hey, I am pretty end of writing my book.
Can you speak up a little bit? I'm having a hard time hearing you. If you can speak up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm pretty much at the end of writing my book.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to figure out, self-publish or try and get an agent, try and get a publisher company to do it. And I know that self-publication does cost some money to do it on your own.
No, it doesn't.
What?
Not a lot. Nope. But go ahead, and I'll explain. But go ahead.
What? How do you make the determination of what would be best for your book? Not knowing, being the first book, not knowing how people would look at it or perceive it.
Yeah. One thing, I would not spend more than a year trying to get an agent if I were starting over again. Self-publishing is very, very easy and efficient. Okay, let me tell you my cost. First thing I get is a cover. I use Marion Designs in Atlanta, and it costs me $500 for a cover. Then once I finish typing it, I get my interior designed. I send it to selfpub.net. They're under $200 for that. Once I have those two things, I'm done. I upload it to Kindle, $25 for the broad distribution, and then it's on sale in 48 hours for the ebook. For the print book, I upload the same because selfpub.net is going to give me a print version, going to give me an ebook version. I upload that to CreateSpace, which is also owned by Amazon. That book is in my hand in 7 days. I only order what I need. If I'm going to do a book signing, I'm going to order 100 books. I'll wait and order the next one. I also have it on audiobook, on Audio Creation Exchange, which is also owned by Amazon. And I pay my after $300 per finished hour. It takes, my books are about 10 hours, around 10 hours, so roughly I'm paying $3,000 for an audio book to publish it. So if you're not interested in audio, you're talking with $500, $700, you're talking about, I don't know, $800, less than that, and $40 to do the copyright, to get your book in print, in Kindle and in print. So that's not a large investment at all. And some people can find and you may find a cheaper cover designer on the internet, but I tell people, do not scrimp on your cover. Your cover is so important. So many self-published from Audible and from Kindle and also from Lightning Source, which has a different distribution. And I'm going to probably be doing a workshop, a webinar on self-publishing soon. So please keep a mind out for that. Make sure that you're signed up on my website at PamelaSamuelsYoung.com. Just sign up on my mailing list because I only send that out that way. But hey, I have no desire to be with the publishing house anymore. I used to. I got an offer from HarperCollins for Anybody's Daughter. It was a crappy offer, but no, I have no desire. I am happy with what I'm doing and what I'm earning. Now, I will say you are going to get wider distribution if your publishing house pushes you, and that is key. If your publishing house pushes you. I know so many authors who are frustrated with their publishing houses and they're leaving. There's minutes left. Probably have room for another question.
Hey, Pam. This is Daphne.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes.
Speak
up a little bit more if you can.
Okay. This is Daphne. You always have the best information. I tell you, you do. Every time I come across you, you always have the best information.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you and your recommendations. My question was marketing because I've already released a book and I'm working on another book. And I already know how to reach, I guess, my core audience, but because they're basically all in the same place. But I want to be able to reach an audience that's beyond that core so my book can go further. How do you do that? Basically, like, what advice do you have, like, really, really marketing effectively?
Okay. One of the keys is, obviously, your book, word of mouth, you cannot beat word of mouth. So for me, for Anybody's Daughter, I'm getting so much love from word of mouth. But beyond that, there's some places that I think are very effective. One is pump up your books. PumpUpYourBooks.com is effective for me. Another thing is effective for me is free campaigns. I think starting to the 21st, tomorrow, I'm doing a free campaign where I'm giving away the In Firm Pursuit for free on Kindle. Now you're thinking, for free? I just did another one of my books, I think Anybody's Daughter, and I got like over 46,000 downloads. So people are going to read that book, they're going to like it, I hope, and they're going to read other books. So the free campaign is a way to reach other people. And what happens is, once the free campaign kicks in and I have all those downloads, Amazon notices and pushes it up higher. So that's another marketing tool. One is any kind of speaking engagement that you can do. Book clubs. I've done over 200 book clubs. And I understand what you're saying about your core audience. For me, I think my core audience is African-American female readers. From there, it's mystery readers. And it just goes beyond. But I think the book, you know what? The book has to almost have a life of itself or be good enough that people are going to tell somebody about it. I did a little radio. I did not find that effective. How many times have you been in the car and heard of a book and you think, oh, I want to read that. But by the time you got home, you forgot about it because you didn't write it down. So I don't think I would do radio again, at least not the radio spots I did. I would do radio if I'm being interviewed or on a radio. When I was on the Monique show, that gave me that gave me much more publicity, and it shot up. Ella Curry, through Ella Curry's reach. Ella Curry really owns the Black African American book club market. I've always seen sales increase after I do something with Ella. So there are some key groups, and you gotta get on the internet and search and look. And I tweet and Facebook and all of that. Also writing articles because people hear about you and go from there. But I think I'm getting word that it's 5 o'clock. The webinar is ending, so I'm going to hit recording. I want to say once again, thank you to the Black Women Film Network for inviting me. Thanks all of you for listening. Recording will be available on their website. And feel free to email me at PamelaSamuelsYoung.com, and there'll be more webinars coming, and good luck with your writing. Bye-bye.
Thank you.